Listening to the Tamar Yonah Show here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. The Iran war, within and without. That's what we are going to be talking about today. And an interesting report that Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the late Shah of Iran and who is leading the People's Revolution, he lashes out on Europe for defending the IRGC in Iran, as he went to many different meetings in Europe trying to get them on the side of the Iranian people, and they are not helping him. And the reason? Europe is dead. Yes, Europe is dead. Quote, rest in hell, unquote. That's what my guest on the show today says. We'll find out why. Our guest is Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. He is a researcher, former lecturer at Ben-Gurion University, and has authored over 90 books and 400 research papers on science, history, and more. He commentates on Mideast and world issues. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we keep hearing and seeing news reports that everyone's locked and loaded, ready to go. Then there's going to be peace talks, and then there's an extension of a ceasefire, or I should say ceasefire talks, peace talks, whatever. And then it's back again to lock and loaded, back and forth like a seesaw. And Europe is staying out. They're not helping Trump. Talk to us about Europe.
Well, who or what is Europe? If we're talking about the continent, the geographical, physical landmass, and of course Europe is still there. No issue of that. I mean, everybody knows that you can put your foot on it, and you can, and it'll, you'll squeeze the water out of the ground or whatever you do with it. That's fine. Europe is, physically it's still there, of course. The question is, does European culture exist today? Does Europe as a geopolitical entity exist today? Does Europe as a civilization or as a people? And again, I'm not speaking of the possible disagreement of, well, are you talking about some supranational state or individual nation states? That's not a really relevant issue. Let me give you an example, just to convert it into numbers very, very briefly for the moment. Okay. France, the government of France recently issued a report, declaration, whatever, that the female fertility in France stands today at 1.7. Not good, not terrible. We know that survival is 2.11, so 1.7 is significantly below that, but it's not like Holland, which is 1.2. It's still better than Holland. It's still better than a lot of other places in Europe. So is 1.7, is that impressive or not? Is that something is that positive news or negative news?
Well, it depends. Are those French Muslims that are making that 1.7%?
That is exactly the point. Put up 2 points for yourself, please. If the Muslims, if average Muslim female fertility stands at about about 4, which is in dispute, but not a crazy number, since we know how they operate, particularly in Europe. And the average female fertility for Christian women across Europe is below. Again, in dispute. There's not real high quality data. It's somewhere between 0.8 and 1.2 generally. And Muslims are about 20% of the French population, with over 900 so-called suburbs where no Christian is allowed to enter. And if it's a female Christian, she's immediately raped, of course. So your question is very much to the point. How much of that 1.7 are Europeans, not people who happen to live on the European geographical landmass, but actual Europeans in terms of civilizational Europeans.
Right.
And while it's difficult to do the math because the numbers are very unreliable, but if those numbers that I've given are anywhere near correct, then the female fertility of Christian women in France is probably significantly lower than 1.0. Again, I'm saying probably. We do not have accurate numbers here, so we have to state these things carefully. But that's where it appears to be.
Okay, and so are you, what I see is that, this is what I see, I could be wrong, but my impression is that these leaders in Europe today are without, that they're weak, they're corrupt, and they are afraid of their Muslim populations. And I think that's why they, even though they're in NATO, did not go and try to help the United States.
I think you're absolutely correct, but you're being a little bit more careful than I would be.
Okay.
I would say that if you look at, for instance, a country like Spain, and it goes the same thing with France and with many other countries as well, not necessarily all of them, but certainly Spain, Portugal, France, and many of these others. Their primary motivation for refusing participation was not fear. They're cowards, of course. They're horrible cowards, and they don't really have militaries anymore, despite their prancing around and trying to make noises that they do. And we can look at some numbers of that as well. But their primary motivation is, what you're saying? You're saying to me that Iran might kill Jews? Oh, lovely. That's their primary motivation. Let's not fool ourselves. There is nothing any European Christian leader wants more than dead Jews. Nothing has changed over the last 1,000 years. The Holocaust did not change them. It only made them more adamant in their desire and more confused in their concept of how to go about doing it.
Now, I want to submit here that a lot of people listening to this are going to think that you're just paranoid, etc., or prejudiced or whatever. But I want to say, and the reason is because we good people can't think like that. We don't think like that. And so because we can't fathom it, we can't imagine that other people can. And I remember reading a book. I actually talked about it on my radio show at a different station I was on, and this one as well. It was written by a Hezbollah terrorist who was helping Israel, and it was a book called From Both Sides of the Border. And he wrote about when he was in the Hezbollah, how they sent him to Europe, to the Vatican, in fact. And there they were working together with Europe, basically, maybe not on a scale of like a per country thing, but with a lot of Europeans that were donating money to help the Hezbollah so they could destroy Israel. So that's why I'm mentioning it here, that people who think this is far off, he's paranoid, etc., understand that just because we don't think like that doesn't mean that others don't think like that. All right, go ahead.
Well, first of all, obviously you're correct. I mean, there's no way to dispute the facts that you've just stated. Because you haven't stated an opinion. You stated their basic facts. But if we look at the opinion, am I paranoid? I certainly hope so. Remember what was his name? The gentleman who began Intel, who was a Holocaust survivor from Hungary. What was his name? I forget his name. I don't know. Anyway, he made a very simple statement about him when he was asked why he opened Intel's largest R&D facility in Israel. I think it was in the 1970s or 1980s or something. I mean, a long, long time ago. And he said it very simply, only the paranoid survive.
Yeah, paranoid people live longer.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was his statement.
Yeah.
Only the paranoid survive. They asked him that. I mean, he was asked, and he said it openly. He's a very, very smart man, obviously. I mean, he went from a Holocaust survivor with literally nothing at all, not even the so-called shirt on his back, to being one of the richest persons in the world because of the phenomenal success of his business, which is now called Intel. And there's nobody that doesn't know the name of that company. One of the most important companies of the last, I don't know, 50 years or something, whatever, however many decades. So, I mean, yes, am I paranoid? As I say, I certainly hope so. But I also happen to look at facts because that's just what I do. So if we look at facts, for instance, I just mentioned the facts about the demography of France. We know that, as I said, more than 900 villages and or suburbs in France where no Christian is allowed to enter, and the French so-called military, it's doubtful if that word can even be comfortably used anymore. 1/3 of it is made up of Muslims. So they're going to fight against Iran? Really? And does anybody really expect that?
So
if we look at Britain, for instance, more than 50 cities and towns in Britain with a Muslim mayor.
Right. One would think, though, for self-preservation, right? Like they say, there's no atheist in a foxhole. Is that how the saying goes?
That's how the saying went.
Okay.
In World War II.
So they see that they're being eaten up, taken over. They see also that by not helping Trump, the longer this war goes on, the worse it is suffering-wise for everybody. And the gas prices are going up because the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and they're suffering. Some airlines now are canceling flights, not just to Israel, but many different flight routes that they have because the cost of fuel is just too high.
I think you're sort of stating it correctly and misstating it at the same time. Okay, you said they look at these things and this is what they see. That's an assumption that this is what they see. They're looking at things, of course. I'm not saying that these people are morons. I'm saying that they're stupid in the sense of not viewing reality in the sense that would be to their long-term benefit. But remember, their long-term benefit in the eyes of the Christian leadership of Europe, whether it be Vatican or Microbe in France, whatever his name happens to be this week. And these are people whose primary motivation in life for the last 1,000 years has been kill Jews. Remember, there is still a village in France by the name of Kill Jews. There is still a village in Spain by the name of Kill Jews.
Yes.
I've not found it on the map, that there's still a village in Portugal as well by the name of Kill Jews. I have not actually found that one on the map. The other two I did. So, I mean, that is a primary motivation. It has been a primary motivation, at very least, since the year 1095, the conference of Claremont, when they declared the so-called Crusades against the Muslim population of the Middle East. So, I mean, so you're stating facts. You're not stating suppositions here. These are difficult. They're not comfortable. I'm not saying that what I've said is pleasant or that people should immediately hug me. I'm not expecting that. I'm not desiring that. I'm just stating what I perceive. I'm asking, can NATO exist if Europe no longer does? Can Europe be claimed to continue to exist if it really and truly has no military.
Okay, Mordechai, I'm just going to interrupt you here. Mordechai, I'm just going to interrupt you because we actually do have a call coming in right now from Europe, and I believe it's from the Netherlands. Listener, do you hear us? Do you hear us? If you hear us, say hello. Wait a second. I'm trying to get him on. Keep talking. Let's try again.
I did hear something.
Yes, I did also. Hello? Caller? Okay, hang on. I'm going to still try to do this. I don't know. The WhatsApp gets wonky. Caller, do you hear us? Do you hear us, caller? If you hear us, do you hear us? Do you hear us? Hello, caller from the Netherlands. Okay.
I'm not hearing anything now.
Yeah, neither am I. But I see that they're on the line. I was trying to see why they are not. Hold on a minute. Okay, keep talking while I try to get this caller on. Go ahead and talk.
Okay. So if we look at the latest data that I have, for instance, talking about Netherlands for the moment. They have an army of 30,000 people. That's an army. That's a military in a country. That's a country that expects to really exist. I remember a few years ago, a very, very senior social working official, whatever the proper terminology is, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. A very senior social worker sitting on my couch here visiting me. Remember, I lived in the Netherlands for a while, a long time ago. Said to me that 1/3 of the 30%, 1/3 of the Dutch youth in the Netherlands, not the Muslim, the Dutch youth in the Netherlands, are basically drunk 24/7.
I saw a lot of, when I was in Hungary a few years ago, I remember walking past garbage bins filled with liquor bottles, empty liquor bottles that had been taken. All right, let's see. Caller, do we have you on the air? Caller? It's Frank from the Netherlands. Let's try to get him on. Frank, do you hear us? Oh, this is so sad because we'd really like to get our European listener on here, or one of our European listeners.
Particularly from the Netherlands, I would even say.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're unable to get him on. We're unable to get him on. Okay.
As you know, I've lived. I've been very active in Britain over the decades. So I'm very familiar with Britain. And I know what's going on there. I mean, these are Britain of 2026 is not Britain of, I don't know, 1986. It's just not the same country. Certainly not demographically.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. Let's go to some of the topics that you had here. You were talking about POTUS, the President of the United States, asks if NATO is still effective.
Now, remember, by law, the President of the United States cannot remove the United States from an active treaty. So the treaty that created NATO is an active treaty. He cannot remove the United States from the treaty without congressional approval. That's the Constitution. There's no way for him to do that. He can't move troops out of there. Remember, the United States has, I don't know the numbers anymore, but an enormous number of troops, an enormous number of bases across the European continent. And this, of course, is a tremendous boost to Europe's economies, the various economies across Europe. Every country that has an American base, the Americans spend a lot of money in that country. So that's a very strong economic tool.
And they give jobs also to the locals there.
Yes, of course, that's part of it. And these people eat, they sleep, they have their basic needs. I mean, all of this is basically local. They're not flying in beans and frankfurters. Okay?
Well, they do actually have American grocery type stores on their bases, but still, people who go out off base, yes, they are buying on the local economy. Go ahead.
Okay, and of course, there's a great deal of economic support as a result of these military bases, regardless of how one addresses the military side of the logistics. And America buys a lot in Europe for these bases, as well as for other things. So what happens if the president, what he does have the control of, he can reposition troops. So what happens if he says, okay, the troops that we have across the European continent, we'll cut them off by 2/3, 3/4, whatever the number might be. How many European economies are going to be very, very seriously impacted by such a move if the president of the United States decides to make such a move? And if the European so-called powers, and we're going to look at some of these numbers, I mean, again, if the Netherlands indeed has an armed force of 30,000 people, then it's not a power. If Britain today has an armed forces of 137,000 total people in the military, including Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever, then it's no longer a power. It's sort of a tickle. So is there any reason why America, as a military power, remember, the United States of America today is both a military and a industrial economic power. Its power base is more than one prong. So if America decides to say, okay, these countries are not aiding us, they're not really doing anything for us except annoying, well, why should we support them? So he remains in the treaty legally, and he begins to reposition. I said I wouldn't use the proper term. Reposition some of the troops in these countries. Why would he not do it? He'd save tremendous amount of money. You're talking about tens of billions of dollars a year savings to the American taxpayer. That, look, troops stationed in Britain or in France are not preventing a Russian invasion of Germany. Not that there's any chance of a Russian invasion of Germany. I mean, we've seen the horrible results of a Russian invasion of the Ukraine. Russia is also a paper tiger. I mean, a country of 143 million population went to war against a country with an 18 million population, which is what it is today, and it is not prevailing. That is almost unprecedented in human history. So Russia is not a significant military power unless we talk about nuclear weapons. So it has a lot of them.
All right, let me just read something that Frank wrote, because we're unable for some reason to connect with him. He wrote, "It is the governments, not the people. If the people in Europe protest, they are brutally cut down by the police. It just happened this week in Holland." And by the way, I just saw a video of somebody trying to play the national anthem on a speaker in Canada, Canada's national anthem, and it was closed down by the police, yet the Muslim calls to come and pray, and their prayers are loudly on speakers, and nothing happens to them. And he was saying that they're losing their country. And the same thing in Australia, and the same thing in the UK, etc. So go ahead.
Well, first of all, Frank's comment, I 100%, can I say 1,000%, whatever the number might be, agree with what Frank just said. Yes, we are talking about the leadership. I thought I made that clear. If I was not sufficiently clear, I apologize very humbly. Yes, absolutely, we are talking about the leadership. We're talking about, pardon me of the graphic term, we're talking about garbage like the so-called president of France. This is a garbage human being. We're talking about garbage human beings like whatever he's called, a president or a prime minister of Spain. These are not normal people. We're talking about people like Keir Starmer. I mean, these are, I don't know, is there an easy way to say in English, yes?
it's quite interesting how these people are coming out. You see their true character, which is very little character.
Well, I would say even more than that. I would say I don't understand what the mechanism is that elected them. I mean, again, I'm agreeing with Frank, but if the Europeans in Europe actually vote, and I don't know the status of this, I'm just throwing out an idea here that I do not know the real facts here. But if the Europeans in Europe, the civilizational Europeans in Europe vote, why are these people the leaders of their countries? I don't understand.
Okay.
I don't see how Frank can be correct, and I totally agree with him. I don't see how he can be correct and this leadership be in power. What put them in power? The only thing that I can come up with, and I'm hoping that I'm wrong on this one, but I have no evidence to prove it, is that the election process across most of Europe is no longer reliable.
You write here, can NATO exist if Europe no longer does?
Yes. When we talk about NATO, what does NATO mean? Not the meaning of the letters, but what is it in real terminology? NATO was created to prevent a Russian invasion from east to west. There is no danger of a Russian invasion from east to west. We know that. Russia can't even defeat Ukraine. They've been trying for 5 years, and they're still in a stalemate. The Russian military is not exactly impressive, to put it very, very, very mildly. There are over 1 million dead people from this war, and neither side is progressing. I did hear that this morning there was some progress on the Ukrainian side, but again, we're talking about a seesaw here that doesn't really count until it counts. It's not there anywhere today. But Ukraine is a tiny country in comparison to all of Russia. Industrially, economically, population. How is Ukraine so effective against all this enormous Russian military? Well, if this is the extent of the Russian military, and apparently it is, then the idea of a Russian invasion of Western Europe is today nonsense. It wasn't in 1950. I'm saying what it is today. 50 years ago, it was still a real threat. Today, it is not a threat at all. So does NATO matter? Who cares? The only purpose of NATO today that I can perceive is to literally suck economic resources from the American taxpayer so that more Europeans can get drunk.
Well, I think if I were a European, I might want to get drunk. After knowing what your future is.
If you were a European, you would no longer be. Because you're intelligent enough to have fled.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't understand why any European, again, I'm talking about civilizational European, not physically present on European continent. Why any European would want to remain there? There's nothing there anymore. Have we seen in the last, 30, 40 years, any significant invention of any European industry? There's still some minor arms industries in Europe, like Rafael in France and etc. But have we seen anything original? Have we seen anything that really matters? Have they invented anything, any technology, military, civilian, consumer, whatever? Have we seen anything come out of Europe? I think the last thing we saw that came out of Europe was the DVD that came out of Philips. I don't know if that company still exists today, which was a Netherlands-based company. And it was a bloody good company. I worked with them. I worked for them. I did a great deal of consulting for Philips. They were a lovely company.
Okay.
I don't know if they exist today. I haven't seen them in decades.
But let's give the benefit of the doubt to the Europeans that do care about their country, about their culture, about their land, that they are proud British or French or Italian or Spanish, people who...
Yes, you're
okay.
So
what about
getting
them?
Frank's point that we completely agree with. Yes, these were basically people that made sense. They're not crazy people. They're not stupid people. But are they present people? Are they there today?
Yeah, a lot of them. You've got Tommy Robinson who's trying to fight for his country, Britain.
Yeah, and we've seen the results of that. I mean, from the outside, he looks, it's like a very powerful joke. Again, I'm not criticizing him, but he has not exactly been effective. He's been acting the while for now 15, 20 years.
So are you saying that there's no hope at all, that the people cannot decide, okay, enough is enough, and that there are enough people in the country to be able to take the reins, deport a lot of these hostile, unassimilating, Western-hating people out of their country, and to get their identity back and their land back, their government back?
Let me give you a series of points on that, on a complex answer. First of all, if the Muslims arm themselves, and we all know that they're armed, who is going to go against them? The grandmothers? There's no European youth. The Muslims have a lot of young people. The Europeans do not. If a civil war breaks out anywhere on the European continent today, can any country in Europe reasonably fight a large plurality of a Muslim population? France can't. England certainly can't. Can Scotland do it? I don't know. I don't have enough data to answer that. England certainly cannot. There simply is not a youth presence capable of putting up a real fight. I don't think grandmas are going to be good at fighting a war. And with all due respect to grandmothers, I know that you're a nice person, but I mean that's not exactly the kind of thing that would impose upon you.
I once read, and I wish I could find the link to it, that you only need 5% of the population that are willing to take up arms and be violent to be able to take over a country. And imagine it as the average American or European or whatever is in their homes, and they go to work and they come home from work, and all of a sudden, as they're eating dinner, Jeeps start driving down the street. People inside those Jeeps are shooting machine gun and telling everybody, stay in your homes. We're going to, if you come out, we're going to kill you, et cetera, et cetera. And people, the average person is not going to pick up a gun and start fighting. They're going to wait until they're called up. They're going to wait for the government to do something first or to tell them what to do, et cetera, et cetera. And by that time, it could be that a government is taken over. Have you ever heard
there was
a
model. I forget the name of the model now, but we obviously read the same paper. It was a historian and I forget it was also a sociologist or anthropologist. I don't recall. I'm trying to remember his name, and it's on the tip of my long nose, and I'm not quite catching it. But I know the exact article that you're talking about. It's not exactly 5%, but he gave a series of ranges. What can be done by this number, and this number, and this number, etc. And 5% was indeed the lowest number, but that needed certain preconditions for that small amount to actually function.
Okay, we have a caller. Let's get our caller on. Hi, caller. What's your first name? Where are you calling in from?
Shmuel from Jerusalem.
Hi, Shmuel from Jerusalem. Go ahead.
I think I have the solution to the Iran problem.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay.
Go ahead.
As it is based a little bit on Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem from last week. President Trump has hinted the fact that he wants to disintegrate Tehran. That's not good enough. I think what he needs to do is say the following. He needs to announce that on a certain date, let's say 3 days, a week in advance, on this and this date, we are dropping a nuclear bomb on Iran. We're telling you in advance so that everybody there can leave. Okay? We're not trying to kill anyone. We're obliterating the city. And they should evacuate to the place where the wind won't blow the nuclear fallout, which will kill them from that. They say that, then the world should not be concerned that this is going to escalate because no one wants an escalation. This is only in extreme circumstances because this is the only way to get rid of Iran, to get rid of the Iran terrorism threat. And he should drop leaflets on Iran to let them know to leave. Then, unless they give a total unconditional surrender, which isn't going to happen because they're going to take his bluff, he should do it. And it's going to be the greatest thing for him and for the U.S. because after the U.S. did this in Japan, when Japan was also being very evil, the world respected the U.S. They became the world leader. And this, again, would put the U.S. as the world leader. Trump would be the king of the world, essentially. And that's what it says in Tosfos, right? That the Rome is going to take over for a while, at least, the whole world.
There's actually an argument about that, whether who's going to win this war. And actually, I just did an interview on video with a rabbi who talks about who's going to win the war, and there's two different views in Judaism.
I know.
Okay.
I think they're both going to lose, but the first step is Iran has to be obliterated and give in. The second is terrorism will fall away. The second step, maybe not pretty, but let's get to the first step. And the second step, I think, is I think eventually Iran is going to succeed at a EMP attack somewhere and destroy the worldwide economy. But the U.S. should prepare for that by immediately hardening their infrastructure of the electrical infrastructure in order to minimize whatever damage that there is. Everywhere, any Western country, all countries should harden their electricity infrastructure to avoid.
So you think this is heading for a nuclear war? This situation?
No, he said he wants to disintegrate Iran. What do you think he meant by that?
But he was talking about power stations, which could cause a collapse of the country by hitting the power stations.
That's not what disintegrate means. Disintegrate means disintegrate. He's hinting to it, but he doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to kill people. He's a nice guy. He doesn't want to kill people. So this is the solution. Tell people in advance. Give them a few days to leave and say, this is what we are doing, period. And then he should cut off the president should cut off all contact with everybody because he's going to get a major backlash on this.
Oh, yeah.
Cut off all contact for the Yonah days that he says he's going to do it in, right? Until he does it. Let him do it. Iran will be history. They'll give in. If they don't give in, he'll do it. Do it into another city another week. Give them a warning. Also, drop leaflets. Tell them we're going to disintegrate another city. And
okay. All right. I think we got your message. Okay, Shmuel.
Okay.
Thanks for calling in. Quite.
I was actually thinking of sending this to the president, but I said, hey, the Tamar Yonah show, that's going to get a lot more publicity than writing to the president.
Okay, all right. It doesn't mean that I agree with you, but let's let Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem answer you. Go ahead. And thanks for your call, Shmuel. Be well. Bye. Okay, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem.
I agree with the model, not with the technique. Okay.
Okay.
I would not use a nuclear weapon. I don't think that's necessary. I think that just creates more, instability than is necessary. There is no problem today to use normal kinds of weapons without going nuclear, and they can do the same exact job. So the model I completely agree with. The technique of using a nuclear weapon, Shmuel is trying to present. He wants the the shock and awe part of it. So he's creating more shock than I'm creating. But I think that would create more bad publicity than is necessary. I agree with the idea of obliterate city A, B, and C. My way is slightly different. The same concept. I would say, if I had the ability like Trump, I would say, okay, on date such and such, we are going to obliterate 10 cities between the size of 50 and 100,000 people in Iran, and not tell them which ones. And tell everybody, get out of those cities. It's your problem. But I would actually leave it with a big question mark to create more discontinuity, more disorder. Anybody living in a city of population between 50 and whatever the numbers might be, I don't care about the numbers right now. Let's say 50 to 75,000, whatever. And there are probably 200 cities like that across the country of Iran. And we're going to eliminate 10 of them next week. Now, nobody knows which 10. He's not revealing it. But again, we're talking about the same kind of thing, the same concept. But what was called and previously shock and awe, to create something so utterly devastating that there is no way back. And I think that's what Trump intended when he said electrical facilities. I think that was an error. That's not graphic enough. You're right. Destroying the electricity structure of a country destroys that country as a functional model. But it's not sufficiently graphic. And in that sense, I would agree with Shmuel here. You want something graphic. You want something that makes their belly buttons invert. You want something that makes them so scared that they are totally unfunctional. We need to remember, and this is a very hard thing to remember, no normal person thinks like this, but we need to remember Sun Tzu. Know thy enemy. Understand who it is you're dealing with. If you deal with them in a Western manner, you will lose. If you deal with them thinking like people in Western civilization normally think, they will win, because their definition of winning and your definition of winning totally differ. Their definition of winning is, if we survive against the world's largest power, that shows that we have a own kind of power, even if they make a tremendous amount of destruction. That's the Iranian definition of a win here. So we need something that is utterly shocking. And that's where Shmuel and I completely agree.
I think the sooner the war is won, the better off everybody on both sides will be. Saying that, let me read you something that came out last night, and that is that for anybody who doesn't know, there has been throughout this whole so-called ceasefire or pause that has been forced on Israel with Lebanon. And, you know, it's like Israel's supposed to be making a peace treaty with Lebanon, but the Lebanese government isn't in power. It's the Hezbollah, and they have been attacking us constantly through this so-called ceasefire where Israel's not supposed to act. So, saying that, where is my piece here? I cannot find it. Isn't this something? But basically, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced last night, according to news reports, that the Lebanese ceasefire agreement has collapsed, and he has ordered a very strong response to taking out the Hezbollah with airstrikes. And there we see again now, we're basically back in war. And I keep thinking also, it's like, how much can our cities and residents in the north of Israel keep absorbing the pounding from the Hezbollah in Lebanon? It's intolerable. It is like every 10 or 15 minutes that was before the so-called ceasefire. Now it's slowed down dramatically, but it's still a state of they've got to sleep in bomb shelters because you never know when it's going to come, and they don't have a few minutes warning. Sometimes they have no warning. Sometimes it's first the bomb and then the red alert sirens go off. So this is intolerable, and I've also thought, just end this already. Do what you have to do. I'm not saying to use nuclear, but again, like you say, there are other weaponry and or tactics that we can do to really just put our fist down and crush the enemy. And some say one might need a tactical. Some people have been talking about it, not me. I don't know enough about it, but they've been saying that they can use a tactical nuclear EMP, which is much smaller and etc., and use that to take out the enemy's ability to fight anymore. But go ahead. I'll leave it to you now.
Okay. Again, the model that you're speaking of is a reasonable model, but the idea that we can just, as we say in Hebrew, zman v'gamalnu, is not realism. We can't just do something that will solve the problem. Hezbollah is not just large, but it's very deeply embedded within the entire population. There is no practical military way to simply defeat them as the things stand now. There's no way to do with it. And as you also said completely correctly, Lebanon as a country does not really exist and has not existed for quite a long time. And again, part of the reason for that is these morons that call themselves the leaders of France, that they so-called support Lebanon, but they don't. All they support is anti-Jewish.
And
they have not helped
proxy
Lebanon
of Iran
for at least 3 decades now, but they still try to do everything to prevent us from solving the problem or preventing the Lebanese from solving the problem.
And I'm seeing pictures here right now on my computer on news reports of cars, traffic jams, as Lebanese are trying to evacuate the southern part of Lebanon, where the IDF gave them a warning that they should leave, and in order for their safety. And they are traffic jams of people fleeing in the south of Lebanon. Now, I just want to stress also that a lot of these people who are fleeing Lebanon are not innocent people. They're the families of the Hezbollah. They are the Jew haters, enemies of Israel.
Not just the family.
Yes, and the Hezbollah itself, but especially their families. So, and yet we're saving them. So it shows where Israel is and its values. But it has to be done. The Hezbollah also needs to be completely eradicated. The Hezbollah. Just like
absolutely, it needs to be.
Like
the question is,
IRGC,
what mechanism can do that?
And the Hamas.
That's the debate here. There is no clear and easy mechanism to simply go in there with more tanks or more this or more that to eliminate them. It's not a question of power here. Clearly, we have a much greater power than they have, but it is a guerrilla force, and there has never in history been any a 100% effective way of defeating that. They're deeply embedded within the population. And by the way, what you're describing about these traffic jams of going north, that's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of Iran. Announce to the world that on whatever date you choose, Thursday at 12 noon, 10 Iranian cities are going to be eliminated. Let them guess which ones. And let's see Iran function after that happens.
Here's a report. This is from a UAE, the United Arab Emirates official. It says, it is clear to our entire region that Iran is a long-term threat. We cannot speak of negotiating in good faith after being attacked with nearly 3,000 missiles. This is the UAE, another Arab Islamic country, talking about Iran. And I just want to plug here again. Last week, I did an interview with an Arab who is wrote a book, and he's talking about how the Arabs need to stop hating Israel and blaming everything on Israel and start looking at themselves, because by blaming Israel, it's preventing Arab countries from looking inside and seeing where they can fix their mistakes and have a better country and life for themselves. Because if you're always it's Israel's fault, then you don't look at yourself and you don't learn how to fix anything. And he was saying that the countries in the Gulf, like the UAE, like Bahrain, like Kuwait, etc., are fearful that U.S. President Donald Trump is going to make some type of agreement with Iran and then abandon the Middle East. And they're going to be left on their own and be on the plate or on the menu for Iran to eat up. They are terrified of this. They want the IRGC taken out. And what is the response of the IRGC? Here's some interesting reports as well. Iranian diplomatic source says, quote, "The message is clear. There will be no further negotiations," meaning with the United States, "unless the Americans accept our terms, including the lifting of the maritime blockade." That's from a report from Al Arabiya. And this is a report here from Belaz News. It says here, the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Islamabad, that's in Pakistan, where they're supposed to have ceasefire talks, with Iranian officials confirming to the New York Times that talks are set to take place. Iran is expected to present a revised written response to a U.S. peace proposal during the talks. And guess what? Of course, it's going to be their terms, of course, and then they're going to submit it to America, which they did. And Trump said, no way, it's not enough. Then another report, and then you can talk, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem, and comment on all this. The IRGC says, "We are ready on all fronts. The United States must accept reality." They say, quote, "We confirm that our forces are ready on all fronts to confront any type of hostile action," meaning against us, them. "The Americans should accept reality and not turn themselves into a tool in the hands of Israel." You're trying to manipulate things. They say that the Americans should look at their destroyed bases, meaning military bases in the region, whose reconstruction is not possible. The only option left for the Americans is a rapid and unconditional withdrawal from the region. Control of the Strait of Hormuz and maintaining its deterrent effects is Iran's uncompromising strategy for continuing the war imposed on it. All right. Go ahead. Take the floor.
Well, you said a lot, so I don't know where to begin. Let me begin with your last statement.
We're dealing with a country that is acting, and maybe it's true, that they can't be beaten. They won't be beaten, and they're calling the shots, and they're calling the terms, whether even to have talks, let alone trying to make a ceasefire or any type of agreements. Go ahead.
The point here is not exactly what they're saying. The point here is what they actually think, what they actually believe. They believe what they're saying. And that's what Americans have a very difficult time to conceive. Americans believe that if they pound them enough with bombs, then they are defeated. They do not understand the concept that for them, survival is a win.
Right.
So what this Iranian official stated about them, this is what he believes. I'm not saying what I agree with. Okay? This is what he believes. And this is what and these beliefs are what motivates them or what drives them. Everyone needs to understand. You can only let's go back to something I said the last time we spoke. I said there's a difference. If you look at World War II, there's a difference between the defeat of Germany and the defeat of Japan. Japan was defeated because Japan stated, "We are defeated." So that was like how do you say it? From A to Z. The Japanese.
It was an unconditional surrender.
No. That's not the right term. Not correct at all. Japan, both in terms of its leadership and its population, agreed that they were defeated. Germany was never defeated. Germany had an unconditional surrender because they were militarily trounced. But the German people never admitted defeat to this day in World War II. And there's a vast difference between the two. And people don't understand that mostly because the educational systems present the American point of view only and not the point of view of the other side. America totally defeated the Japanese, which is what allowed the Japanese to now become a staunch ally of America. Basically, Japanese said, to state it graphically, and I apologize if this is somewhat impolite, they said, okay, guys, we agree, we did wrong, now we want to be friends. The Germans never said that, never.
I want to say here also that
they won't cooperate, but that's all.
I want to add that any decent person that is hoping that some type of agreement is signed between the IRGC and the President of the United States, it's basically leaving all of the Iranians there that are against the regime, that are for freedom, that are wanting to be friends with the West, etc., leaving them to their death because they will be pursued and killed afterwards. And no one should be hoping.
Let's take that statement. Let's take that statement that you just made and analyze what you're actually saying, okay? Now, Americans look at that statement and say, well, how do you expect that the Iranian leadership will kill Iranian population? Because they, of course, ignore what happened when the Iranian leadership, quote unquote, killed some 40,000 or 45,000, or what the number was, just basically a few short weeks ago. And the answer is they don't think that way. This so-called leadership, the Revolutionary Guard Command, they don't view the population as being integrated with them. They're not a part of the same group. These are people who are these are their pawns, and they can sacrifice pawns because they don't count. And again, Americans cannot think that way. And this is not criticism of America. This is a different way of thinking. If you're not capable of understanding your enemy, you cannot defeat them. This goes back thousands of years, this concept. America needs to get that into the head. When I listen to, for instance, American generals, I listen to this gentleman Kellogg, and I listen to Jack Keane. Jack Keane, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know how good he was as a general. He was like a 4-star general, so obviously he was extremely powerful. I don't know anything about his actual military career. I only listen to what he says. The man is brilliant. I wish Americans would listen to him. He's stating the same kinds of things that I'm saying now. You need to understand what their definitions are and defeat that. If you cannot understand that the leadership of the country of Iran are not Iranians, and therefore the Iranians are simply sacrificable, then you cannot defeat Iran. Which is why I go back to, pardon me, what I said at quite some time ago. The only way to effectively defeat Iran on a permanent basis is to split it up.
Balkanize it.
Well, balkanize is not quite the right term. But what we need, for instance, is the Ahwaz, which was originally a independent nation and was treated badly by the British and given as a so-called gift. 95% of Iranian oil is in the Ahwaz. So make it back into a country as it was up until the 1927. Give the Kurds their own country. Give the Baluchs their own country.
Yes.
There's no reason why these people do not deserve to have the countries of their own. And that would solve the problem permanently.
All right. So what can we do about it? It's coming towards the end of the show. What can we do to help things
mean
along.
Israel?
All over the world. People who are good people.
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. What can we do other than to talk to people and tell them this is the optimal solution? The American State Department absolutely hates the idea of splitting countries up, and they have since the middle of the 19th century. I think it was like 1890 something or 1980 something that they came up with this idea that you don't split up other countries. I don't know how
except if it's Israel. There you can do two states for etc. And split us up.
Yeah, because they don't really believe that Israel exists. The State Department has never believed that Israel exists. Look at the statements of George Marshall in 1947 and 1948. Just look what he actually said. I have it in a book here. You can come over and look at it. There's no problem.
All right. Anything else you want to add before we go?
No, nothing else. I think I've said too much already.
So I just want to announce here, though, to all of our listeners that I have been told by people that are promoting the station, that are helping us, our marketing people, they're saying, Tamar, you need to do more videos. And I have been digging my heels in. I do not like to be on camera. I'm an old fuddy-duddy grandmother. And I've been really digging my heels in. But I have done 2 videos, and I think that they are very worth listening to. One was with, as I said, an Arab man who is he's an author, and he's trying to get the Arabs to look at themselves and fix what needs fixing. And in my other video, which is just going to be uploaded, God willing, today on Sunday, with Rabbi Isser Weisberg, who is a rabbi who studies end of days, and he had some very interesting things to say about who might be winning this war, about the Messiah, about the war of Gog and Magog, etc. So I really urge you to go and check out those videos. They'll be on our homepage at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, as well on our Facebook page. Follow us on Facebook, Israel News Talk Radio, and on Instagram, etc., and all those other places. So really, really worthwhile checking them out. And Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem, I want to thank you very much for coming on and breaking things down for us. It's very sad what we hear from you, but you are analyzing these things, and it's good to get a more scientific look at the data and not just a feel-good.
I wish I could say things that were more pleasant. I don't enjoy being the one who says things that are unpleasant, but it's reality.
All right. Well, I want to thank you anyway for coming on the show. Very, very much appreciated. And to everybody here, you have been listening to the Tamar Yonah Show here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Thank you for being with us. And remember, do good, be good, pray that the situation gets better. And if we become better, that's all we have control over is ourselves, then the world will be that much better. Thanks for being with us, everybody. Hey everyone, to make sure you can get access to all of our interviews, make sure to hit the subscribe button on both our YouTube and Rumble channels. Your click makes us all stronger. Thanks.